Welcome to Garblag Games, Masters and Monsters, the Mage the Ascension game.
Welcome back. Hello to episode 2 of Masters and Monsters. Last time we did character creation, and this time we're going to get into the story. So we're going to go around in a minute and everyone can introduce who you're playing and all that good stuff. But before we do, the usual plug, please go and check out our Patreon. We are starting to put some cool things on there. We're going to have behind the scenes videos, maybe of what we've just been talking about before we start the game. We are doing Garblag's Gulags, which are some dungeon maps that we're creating, which sounds like Garblag's Gonads, but it's not. And other things. So we've got D&D character subclasses and all kinds of wonderful things on there. So please go and check that out. Link is below. As usual, check out our social media. See us on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. And especially on Twitter, as you can see, the new Dwarf Run GIF of Roger from our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay episode, which is brilliant. Thank you, in the Impossibility Professionals. Which leads me on to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which is our other show, Flint Steel. Please go and check that out as well, if you want to see people dying in pirouettes of blood, which is the name of the latest episode. Anyway, without further ado, maybe we should go around and introduce ourselves.
Okay, so I'm Sam and I'm the storyteller.
I'm Colin, and I am playing Captain Rufus William Foxmere, an Akashic brother.
And I'm Adam, and I'm playing Abe Cohen, a sci-fi writer, son of ether, engineer.
And what does he normally wear?
Overalls.
I'm Roger, and I'm playing Private Ron McDougall, who is a Canadian Mountie, joined the army, who is a member of the Verbena tradition.
I'm Pete, and I'm playing Jeremy Cranthorne, who works for Her Majesty's Treasury. And he is a Order of Hermes mage, so he likes spellbooks.
So, to give you a bit of background about where we're starting, we are starting on the 30th of June 1944. The D-Day landings have been successful. The Allies are moving into northern France. However, at this point, London and a significant portion of the south of England are still within range of the V1 rocket bombs, and there has been strikes on and off for the last 15 days. At the point we find our characters, there's 70 to 100 of the V1 bombs reaching London per day. And the death toll is the highest it's been since the Blitz finished some years ago.
70 to 100 a day?
100 a day.
Bloody hell. Sorry.
This period we're doing is a period where London is under fairly intense bombardment for the last time in the war. Over this period we're talking about of a month, there'll be over 22,000 people killed in London as a result of these bombs, and more than 1 million homes and businesses will be damaged. So our characters are finding themselves at best a bit on the sleep-deprived side, and in a city that is almost literally going to hell. And we're ready to start for the week, I think.
Yes.
So, for various reasons, some very mundane and you've been here before, some that have turned up rather recently in slightly more muddy circumstances, you have all been asked to attend...
Sorry.
You've all been asked to attend the Home Office in Whitehall to visit a gentleman called Captain Henry Walsgrove. Captain Wallsgrove is widely known to most of his staff as having been a World War I hero. However, most of those staff are a little bit vague on what he actually did that was that heroic. But whatever it was, it's clearly left the poor old boy with some serious injuries that prevent him actually taking any from a field post in this war. To the rest of people from the awakened mage societies, Henry, or Harry as he prefers to be called, is a member of the Order of Hermes who was severely injured fighting a rival mage in the First World War and has never really recovered from his injuries. I think as Adam's character's been in and around the southeast of England for a bit, you've probably come across Harry before. Mm-hmm. Likewise, I would assume Peter's a member of the same tradition. You've probably also come across Harry, and you've also worked not very far from here at all. Colin, we literally going with you arrived last night.
I'm happy with that.
You arrived last night, and one of his staff found you somewhere to stay and took some details off you to tell him. But this is the first time meeting the man himself. They also gave you somewhere to have a shave and clean up this morning as well. Roger, it's up to you if you want to have been here before. You're fairly new in London anyway, but you're not going to be here tons of times. But it's up to you if you want this to be the first time or the sort of second or third you've met him.
I've probably not met him. I've probably just been lingering around the barracks waiting for an assignment.
Well, there we go. Then this works well because this is the assignment. So, if everyone's happy,
So what was his sort of military rank and?
he's a captain, but he is retired now, so he is effectively a civil servant as far as the sleepers need to know. He's a relatively senior hermetic mage, however, but he prefers to keep a finger in government, and since he feels he's not much use in the field these days, this is a very good place to put him.
Sorry, what was the surname?
Wallsgrave.
Grave. Sorry, Grave.
Wallsgrave.
I wrote it wrong.
Henry Walsgrave. Or Harry, as he prefers to be called. Those of you that, I say, have met him before, but I'll do a description as it'll be the first time that you'll be meeting him. But I think we shall begin the action in his anteroom sort of chamber outside his main office, where you will probably first encounter one another. Again, I don't know if Adam and Pete, whether you've been moving in similar-ish circles in and around the ministry occasionally. Adam's based outside of London, but comes in fairly regularly. You might at least have seen each other in passing.
Yeah.
Whether you've, probably not had time to sort of form a long
I look like I'm
association.
Harry's accountant.
That's all right.
That's probably why I'm hanging around. You haven't seen me in my robes yet.
Are you wearing the accountancy robes?
No. Level 4.
So we're in a nice antechamber in the Home Office in Whitehall. You're on ground level rather than any of the deeper down, safer areas at this point, because it's the middle of the day, which is not normally when the rocket attacks occur, and also Harry isn't that important. So it's quite nice because a lot of very important people have vacated their rather nice spacious offices under the above level to take somewhere safer and more secure, or possibly even field postings. So Harry's been left with quite a decent room. So it's got quite nice wooden floors. There's some nice carpets and little chairs. And you've all been shown through by a very polite young lady in army uniform who's asked you all to wait patiently and has gone ahead of you into the office, which is where Harry is normally found. So I think we shall start with describing one another, shall we? So who wants to go first? Let's go with Colin, so I'm looking at him.
Sure.
There we go.
Why not? Okay, so he is clean shaven, very neatly turned out, but probably not actually at the moment in any uniform because that's long gone. Quite fairly well built man, probably spending at least some of the time that people are waiting, gazing out of the window and talking to himself, just quietly muttering something.
Been a long war.
Yes.
Right. Adam, we think we get a rough idea of what you're going to probably
Let me guess. Glasses.
But if you want to, you can elaborate if you wish to at all.
Yeah, he's a bit younger than me and looks, more, I don't know. Yeah, but he's generally clumsy and he's playing with his pen a lot, and so you're not that usually different to be honest.
Okay, but a bit younger than you.
Yes.
There we go. Roger.
He's in his late 20s. He is wearing a uniform of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as he doesn't really have very many civilian clothes with him, and didn't want to be walking around in army uniform, because people would probably be wondering why he's not doing his bit in fighting.
Yes.
He would be sitting in a corner away from other people if he could. Assuming
This is quite reasonably large.
Yes, this is quite a
It's quite a bit of space. We're all in a different corner looking out of a different window.
You can all have your own corner.
He would probably be looking at a paper or something, pretending to anyway, to just kind of avoid people as best he can.
So we do have, introverts unite separately.
He is, however, he's quite a large guy. He's over 6 foot tall, very well built, He's clearly
No shit.
Well, he's very much from a physical background. That's quite apparent. He is quite clean shaven, although it looks like he's not quite used to it.
So there's a chap sitting in a high back chair reading a newspaper, smoking a cigarette. There's something bad about his right foot, and there's a walking stick leaning against the chair. He's got very neat moustache, no beard, and his hair is got a very strong right-hand side parting, which I can't do anymore. Well, I can, but then I have a comb over. And it's sort of, got pomade or some grease in it or something to keep it down. He's looking through the Financial Times.
Right. Okay, so the neat young lady that showed you into the waiting room emerges from Harry's office and says, "Oh, gentlemen, Captain says he'll see you now."
Thank you.
Right. And she leaves the door open, and you will shuffle through as people that don't know one another awkwardly move through the same doorway.
I'll fold the paper up and tuck it under my arm. It's my paper. It's not
their
the
paper.
office.
No, it is your paper. That is
Put the
fine.
cigarette out.
Did you say it loudly in case someone worries?
Just very deliberately, like.
But there's a guilt though, because whenever you take a magazine, like I take a scientist, like the doctors or surgery, and you just kind of read it and you kind of pick it up to you.
I brought it with me.
I know, but it still feels like everyone thinks you're stealing.
Oh no, there's notes in between different.
You've licked it, so it's yours.
Absolutely.
No licking of newspapers in the 40s.
So, are you in the still like the red uniform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I was gonna say when somebody did the romantic, I assume it was still like the bright red thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hat and everything, although it's not on because that would be rude. Because
inside,
indoors.
You're indoors, so it's impolite to have your hat on.
Yep.
Right.
He is carrying it.
But if you were to bring one along to wear as costume, then we wouldn't mind if you wore it indoors here with us.
That would be rude.
Anyway.
Very un-Canadian.
Right.
You just have to wear the red
I'm
uniform.
expecting at least a red jumper.
Red t-shirt. Anyway, the office that Harry has been given at the moment is rather nice. It's quite a large room. It's got 2 big windows that look outside. But obviously, at the moment, they've got a degree of sheeting over them in order to minimise any lights from them overnight, even though there will be backup blinds as well. He's got a big sort of walnut-looking desk, and there's several racks of bookshelves behind him. There are all books on it. These don't look like they're Harry's books because, to be honest, there's a bit of a fine coating of dust over some of them. They look like bound meetings and minutes from years and years and years of sort of government bureaucracy, effectively.
Excellent.
For those of you who have not seen Harry before, his appearance is initially a little bit odd. So Harry's a big bloke, again, over 6 foot tall and really wide at the shoulders and quite heavy these days as well. He's probably in his late 40s, early 50s, but it's difficult to get a really good bead on him. He clearly has a massive degree of difficulty moving the left-hand side of his body almost at all. Everything from his face down to both arms and his legs. And even if you see him trying to move around, it doesn't even look like his hip and shoulder joints are working correctly on that side. If anyone has medicine and wishes to make an intelligence and medicine roll to see if there's anything particularly unusual about this, you can.
Sure, why not?
Difficulty 6, because it's not that common, but it's not that unusual. And tell me how many you get.
Oh, how many ones you roll?
1.
Nope.
2. Right. Mind you, as you two have known him before, you may even have heard stories. Right. It doesn't look like he's had a stroke or anything. Yeah, the facial droop does a bit, but the rest of it just doesn't move right. It genuinely looks like not just the muscles are not moving under his control, but almost as if that side of his body is rigid. This does not look like any sort of mortal medical condition. This is probably some form of magical malady of a sort. However, he does manage to hobble around all right, but particularly those of you that have dealt with him before, particularly if he's obliged to hobble fast or try and look more normal around other sleepers, there was a faint tinge of magic coming off of him, so he's probably sort of using magic to move himself around a bit more than he should really be able to do. He still stood up when you lot enter the room, because it's polite. But once you're all pretty much in, and whoever one of you's last, probably one of you two that's more comfortable with the
I'm
office.
slow, so I'll...
Yeah, you
Big
close the
bastard.
door sort of
Yeah.
behind you. He sits back down almost immediately, and there is a serious clunk as he does so, just in terms of he's heavy, and the chair sort of sags a little.
I will have walked in, stood to attention, saluted.
Sit down, Captain, sit down. And he says,
Is it morning?
yes, there are seats sat around. Gentlemen, please. There is no need to stand on the ceremony. Do come, have a seat, tea, coffee.
Coffee.
Tea, please, Harry. That'd be wonderful.
Molly! He yells out the door, and the young lady puts them back in. Go and find us some tea, and he pats down the side that works, and get me some cigarettes.
I'll take out my cigarettes and offer him one.
Thank you. Yes, marvellous. He goes and gets it.
Don't worry, Harry, I'll chat.
He will offer it towards you as if he's expecting you to hold out a light, because he can't.
I'll go.
He can't do two things at once. Right.
Can I do a little flame on my thumb?
Yeah. If you really wish to. I can't be bothered to roll for that. Right,
Just
so
take
he
2
sits...
paradoxes.
Well, strictly speaking, this is Hermetic Sanctum territory, probably, so it's probably fine.
The rest of us are everyone.
Yes, the rest of you are in trouble. The benefit, again, of people that haven't come across this, like Roger, if an area is made his own little home and they have put time and energy into making it theirs, it's easier for them or anyone that shares their paradigm to do magic in that area. So as Harry's quite a traditional Hermetic, as is Pete's character, they probably find it relatively easy to work in the same space. It's not quite as good for you as it would be for Harry,
Yeah, sure.
but it's still right.
Sure.
Whereas if someone who believes you have to technologically take things to bits before anything works would probably struggle in here.
Again, no benefit.
No, you gain no benefit from being in here. So he, tells you to sit, and faffs slightly with the cigarette due to doing it all with one hand. And Molly reappears with a tea trolley and gives everybody a cup of tea, if they so wanted, or a glass of water or whatever if they didn't.
Coffee.
Yes, and she'll bring the coffee as well. Right. So, how's everyone holding up? Anybody sleep?
Not especially well.
No.
I managed to get some.
Were you boys all right out at Cranfield?
Yeah. That's not a huge amount happening out there, I don't think.
There shouldn't be, as I say. I don't think we've heard anything about any of your lot on reports, so you should be all right out there for a bit.
No, it's quiet.
Good. So, some of you know me, some of you don't. Most of you probably by now, again, slight exception to your captain we'll get to in a little bit, probably know there's not too many of the active traditionalists in the town at the moment, and a situation has arisen. Well, 2 or 3 situations has arisen, but that's 2 or 3 more than I've got people to deal with. So I've asked your various authorities if I can borrow you on loan for a few days while we work out what's going on. I didn't, however, particularly ask to borrow you because as far as everything I've been able to get, he sort of brandishes a sort of manila paper folder. Apparently you're a sleeper and you're dead. You don't appear to be either. Young man, care to explain yourself?
Yes. My avatar appeared to me at Dunkirk and directed me south.
Sounds reasonable.
I've spent the last 4 years in various parts of Europe making trouble.
Yes, we heard some dispatches on...
Good man.
We've heard some dispatches from some resistant channels, which is why the reason we're having this conversation here rather than in the military barracks. So we were loosely aware there was someone of your description knocking around, so that corroborates. I think, given I need to act rather fast, unless you have strong objections, he takes up the manila folder and drops it in the wastepaper basket next to him. Let's allow them to continue to believe you're dead for a little longer. And we'll reissue you some IDs. How does that sound?
You think that would be most?
I think it's the best part. Also, not to mention the way I'm going through agents at the moment, you probably will be in the not too distant future, so there's probably less point worrying about that then. We'll get you sent something. He moves around some other bits of paper. For the rest of you, I've got some temporary warrants to say that you're working for me. He hands around some bits of paper. These effectively say you are currently on ministry duty, you're working as part of a GHQ intelligence squad, and also contain sort of papers that people with authority get to see, and also a sort of small summary to flash to various sort of sleepers and people on the street to explain you are on His Majesty's business and are not to be interrupted. You all right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Possibly
I
just
probably will be examining the papers to make sure there's nothing weird about them.
no, they just appear to be papers. We'll get you sorted out something.
Thank you, sir.
So, if I may, to the problem.
Indeed.
So, as you may have noticed, we had one or two little strikes in the city last night. And one of them set off a ward that a colleague of mine put up before she was called to service on the continent. There is a young lad living out east towards Mile End who has a, well, as yet still sleeping but particularly interesting and well documented avatar. He's
Well documented.
It's a former Order avatar. It's been a member of the Order of Hermes in previous lives. The boy's only 12, so it's not. It's perfectly understandable that it's not awakened as yet, but we've been keeping tabs on him. And my colleague had placed some wards around his house so we would know if anything untoward happened. Last night, it seems that his next door neighbour's house was a direct hit. The wards all went off. However, the wards provide me with a degree of information. He takes us and looks a little bit like a telegram. And what these inform me is he's gone, but he's not dead. And that is, in a way, slightly more worrying than just dead. If he was dead, it's a shame we've lost track of the avatar, but I'm sure we'll pick it up again. But gone worries me. There's all sorts of places a lad of that age could get himself into trouble in this city.
And just gone, you don't know if that's taken rather than gone?
Literally, this happened about 3 a.m. this morning, so we know.
No.
All I know is what the wards tell me. I'm going to struggle to get out there myself, but finding this boy and either confirming that he's safe and getting him somewhere safe, or confirming that he's passed away, is of vital importance. That is not a lad we can have falling into enemy hands in any circumstances.
Definitely not.
And I know
So how gone is gone?
he's not within a mile of the ward.
No.
That is all I can tell you. The ward is slightly more complicated. I give you some more details because she based it on an old parish boundary. For some unknown reason, she's a bit like that. But he's not within the bounds that she set, which is where he would normally be. That includes his house and his school and his church.
Right.
And he does not appear to be within those areas. According to, I got some brief telephone conversation with a warden on the ground last night who said that his mother is alive and is very concerned for his welfare. So I think she's got to be the first port of call.
Mm-hmm.
See what she said, see what she saw.
Interview the family.
Yes. And see if we can find this little boy before
And he's
something
been in
bad does.
the London for the duration.
Yes, the family weren't evacuated. We contemplated it, but it's Mile End. It's really, I mean, the Blitzer was very few hits out there. It's quite far away from the infrastructure where the family live. And as you may imagine, the last fortnight has taken everyone a bit by surprise, and we haven't had a chance to move. He's a priority target, but he's not a high priority target. With the benefit of hindsight, yes, we should have had him, or the whole family off in the wilds of Oxfordshire, and this wouldn't have happened, but hindsight, eh? The other reason as to why this is a particular worry is I have a source who I'll try and arrange for you to meet, but it won't be till tonight, who occasionally manages to filter me some bits of information. Some of the they've been using the Aldwych tube as a deep shelter again. They were literally pulling the plyboard off 2 nights ago, I think, to get it back open again. And when they did so, down one of the side tunnels that is not in use, they found a fairly badly desecrated corpse. I'm still having people that know better than I do run traces on what all the glyphs and runes involved are, but they certainly look awakened, and they certainly don't look like anything most of us would want to be associated with. There's no evidence there's a practitioner in the city, but there's a worry.
And this was a recently desecrated corpse.
Yes, we think, well, not bang fresh, but definitely in the last couple of weeks. That this, given it's been a bit sweaty the last few weeks, we'd tell if it was older than that. So I'm now slightly, although that's the other side of the city from the lad, it just worries me just that little bit more than if I knew that all was quiet on the home front.
And when will you have the particulars on the glyphs and...
He looks at the clock. He's like, 7:30, back here for dinner, chaps?
Sounds like a good idea.
The papers should clear most civilians, home guard wardens, police to helping you out as much as you need. Molly comes back through with a small envelope of things. He's like, there we go. Just sorting out what you need. But if you run into any trouble, you've got the phone numbers for the office, haven't you? You have somebody call Molly and we can sort it out. As time is of the essence in this instance, I'll have one of the lads with the staff cars drive you over there and drop you, but you can make your own way back if that's all right.
What?
But the omnibuses should be running during the day.
What have the parents been told about him?
Is there a father?
Father's overseas, yeah.
Can we see his house? Can we see his house?
Yeah, should be able to. Well, what's left of it.
Hmm.
The family have been told before the war that the lad is extremely gifted. He is of great interest. We have arranged a scholarship to a fancy school for him when all this is sorted out. I'm not even sure Mum can read and write, so I think this all came as enough of a shock for them in one day. We'll work up to he's a reincarnated master of magical order in the next few years, I think. Starts slow.
That's a slow one, that one.
Yes. I've got some copies of his father's service record as well, if people wanted to have a little quick look. He hands around some sort of small envelopes that have just got those little, almost little, like, index cards in them, basically. If anyone wants to take a quick look. But no, as far as we're aware, father is alive and well with one of the squads that's moving through towards our dens at the moment. So, no trouble there as far as we know.
What was in the envelope I was given?
The envelope you have been given contains identity papers, ration cards, and associated paperwork of existing at this point. They are in a civilian name, which we shall make up in a moment, but it effectively, in terms of sort of bits where it explains who you are, it explains that you are a soldier on exceptional leave at the moment, so you're not a civilian, should anyone ask. But it doesn't give you a rank as yet or anything of that sort. It's like, we'll see how those go and add up, and then if we manage to resolve this little conundrum, I'll see if I can get something better in the next day or two done. But that shouldn't cause any questions for now anyway, that's probably good enough. Any further questions? Jen?
No, it seems like we're taking a trip out to
It's
Milo.
on this matter, but I'd like to discuss something with you briefly before we leave.
Not to worry, everyone happy?
Guessing
Everyone-
that's
that's
our
fine.
cue to leave.
Yeah, no, thanks, Harry. We'll try and find him.
Not
Good man.
necessarily, but
No,
once
a man's business is his own. Don't worry. Harry, a pleasure as always.
Certainly, lads. So let yourself out, prevail yourself of tea, cigarettes, and the restrooms before you need to go, because I gather things are pretty desperate out in Ireland this morning.
I shall pop to the gents.
And I'll see you.
leave.
And I'll
Leave the room.
see you this afternoon. Well, this evening. Turn up for supper.
I'll go and linger around outside.
You go and linger outside.
Yeah.
You two linger outside.
Yeah.
You go.
I'd go to
The
the
rest-
gents.
That's probably sensible. Right.
Yes, I have had some contact with the Ravenna in Norway. I was up there
Oh right, yes.
not last winter, but winter
I
before.
don't think there's any of them left.
There are, but there might not be for much longer.
Oh, okay.
There is a nefandous apprentice leading a unit of Nazi soldiers who are searching for some kind of artifact.
Can you give us coordinates, or at least
I
approximate?
can give you all the information I have.
Marvellous.
The
We'll get-
Ravenna are intending to wait for the Nefandi to get closer to discovering the artifact, move in, seize the artifact, and use it to slay the master that they were expecting to turn up. I've been with those Ravenna. They are not going to survive this attack.
Right.
Or at least, that's the best case scenario.
Right. Okay. And we think this might be in the not too distant future.
Yes.
Right,
That
in which case,
seems to be-
I'll get Molly back in. She takes notes far quicker than I do these days, and we'll get the coordinates off of you, and I'll let HQ know.
Thank you, sir.
Right, Molly will go back in briefly, for those of you continuing to hover outside. I don't know if you wish to chat among yourselves or not. That is absolutely fine.
I would.
Okay.
I'm just myself. Abe Cohen.
Ron McDougal.
And I'll come back out, sort of drying my hand. Jeremy Cranthorne.
Oh, yeah. She hands.
Pleasure to meet you both.
Right, yes, you'll stand there for a minute while
When you come out, I'll do the same.
Molly comes back in again. He's
Jeremy
there for a
Cranfield,
couple
did
more
you
minutes.
Jeremy Cranthorne.
Molly goes back in. They're in there for a couple more minutes, and then you emerge.
So yeah,
Given that Molly was happily making notes on using language like Nafandos as she was going, you assume she is either apprentice, acolyte, or associate of Harry's. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Cohen, I've seen you around here several times over the last couple of months.
yeah,
It's a pleasure to actually finally talk.
yeah, it's supposed to meet you too. Yeah, I'm normally based out in Cranfield. We do analysis of unusual things. I didn't realise you were, enlightened.
Yes, I try to keep a low profile. I'm working away with some mundane things most of the time,
All right.
unfortunately, and then trying to find funding for the enemy. Let's put it that way.
To fight the enemy.
Yes, I try to find their funding and stop it.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, no, we just analyse unusual stuff and things like that. Do you know
Materials or data?
Materials normally. Departments like data's a different department, although obviously they cross over occasionally.
Of course.
But yeah, no, various different munitions, items, and then the more magical stuff, well, I guess you'd call it.
Of course.
The more etheric.
Well, perhaps maybe you might be able to help me out at some point when we're not. I pull out this pocket watch,
Yeah.
which is mostly made of sort of
Let me take it.
reluctantly. It looks like it's sort of mostly sort of silver.
Yeah, it'll pop open the back.
If you could pass that back. Sorry, this is the item that caused my awakening.
All right.
And I'm very keen to make sure that it's not stopped.
Oh, I wasn't going to stop it. I was just going to look at the workings. But yeah, sure. Fair enough.
Well,
But
Yeah, given the
if you want me
thing
to work
to
out how it
be
works, then I
right.
need to look at it.
I don't as yet know. Yes, this is probably not the correct surroundings for such an investigation.
Uh-huh.
However, I am not fully understanding of this item.
Yeah.
At some point, I do wish to try to figure that out. Harry and his chaps aren't necessarily the right people for that. And if you are
Yeah, no. I
an
mean,
expert in the field, then that would probably
Well,
be.
the best we've got currently. But
Do you wish to attempt any form of sensory magic while you're in the same place as it?
no, not without looking at it properly.
Sorry to keep you waiting, gentlemen.
Right, emerges.
But yeah, no.
Just had some information that I've come across recently that seemed relevant.
Right,
And you're Captain.
Captain Rufus William Foxmere. Rufus, but
Jeremy Cranthorne.
excuse me.
I
I will salute. So you said you're a captain.
I'll shake your
Captain
hand. Hey, Cohen.
Foxmere. That was Pete asking. not-
a
Yeah, sorry. Okay, Foxmere, what kind of name's that?
Yes, you'll return the salute.
young, slightly older woman, also wearing a uniform, but with a sort of outside coat and what looks like driving gloves, comes in and says, "Gentlemen, I gather I'm your lift to Mile End."
Excellent.
She will salute actually all of you because she's been told she'll work for Harry and it's safest. And then she will lead you outside to a staff car.
As we step outside, I will greet my dog. There's a husky waiting outside, sat very still.
"Oh, you're a pretty boy," says the lady that's taking you out, "isn't he? Hello."
I'll give him a nod that he's allowed
Alright.
to not bite her.
he wanders over and lets himself be petted. "There's room for you in the car too. Come on." She rubs the top of his head. Right. It looks like this is a civilian Ford from before the war that's been requisitioned for the war effort, as it were. It isn't going to go over fields in France or whatever, so it is ferrying dignitaries around London. Also, those of you that have seen Harry try and walk, he cannot go far, so he probably must have something at his disposal to move him around.
That's why we get on.
Yes. So she will sort of usher you in seats.
Share limping tips. Yeah.
Usher you in seats. The husky can sort of stop
Stick
himself
shopping.
down on.
Down on the footwell.
Yeah, the husky will sit down in the footwell, and she will begin to drive you
Before
out
we
towards
leave,
East London.
before I get in, actually, is it one of the ones you can open the her door? Can I ask her to pop the her door? Do you mind if I just check? I always like to check a vehicle before I get in it. Yeah, not buses, because I don't like it.
Yes,
Especially if it's like
yeah, she will.
main.
Yeah.
But if it's a car in this kind of business, it's always a good idea.
While everyone's distracted, I'll painfully climb into the car.
I'm
Right,
completely ignoring him. So
Okay.
She will happily open the hood for you. She will point out different bits and explain her maintenance schedule as if she is fully expecting to be inspected on this.
Yeah. I just want to have a quick look over it, basically.
It looks very well maintained.
And make sure there's nothing weird about it.
Right, she will. Yes, if you'll pack into the car. And she will start to take you towards Mile End, which is a good few miles out east. It's not going to be on my map.
We're visiting Roger.
Yeah, somewhere over by water is basically where you're going. Yes, you're in the car. She is focusing on driving. It does look like there's been some hits to the city overnight, as you do pass some sort of active sites. However, say this all started again not that long ago, probably less than a fortnight. So things like getting up barrage buildings and stuff is happening. I mean, some had stayed up throughout the war, but they're clearly trying to deploy more and get the defences back to sort of blitz standard. So as you pass through sort of open areas, you can see people unwrapping long lengths of canvas and stuff that are possibly going to be barrage balloons and that kind of thing. It's clear the city is trying to prep itself for dealing with this.
It's just outside, I don't see it, but for some reason it's been a week or so since I've been in the capital. But it's been a few years since it's been like this.
It's a heavy toll that we pay for this war. But it must be paid.
I just got to wonder where they found them.
The young lady in the front says, and the particular bastard thing I'm informed is these ones are unmanned. So there's not even a pilot to outwit, they're just going where they're going.
Yeah, no evidence from what I've seen suggests that.
I don't know enough of such things.
No, I don't really, but you hear the guys talk. Unless directly questioned about anything or anyone, she will drive you out there relatively
I've got the
quietly.
newspaper back out and I'm looking at a few stories in there.
I will be petting my dog.
Dog seems very obedient. It sat neatly in the footwell, not causing any problems.
Probably making idle chatter.
All right, you can do
Remember.
it. Oh, yeah, she'll talk to you
I'll
idly.
probably
about-
talk to you about what's been going.
Yes.
I've got 4 years of news to catch up.
Yeah, but yes, there's been government appointments have changed.
And
all
probably
sorts of
some
things.
very interesting stories to share.
Yeah, I'll probably, since you seem reticent, not like you want to talk, I'm not going to push you. So yeah, I will. Yeah, say, well, what do you want to know what's happened? Football results, that kind of thing.
Catch one another up. Right, so you can catch you up on, yes, some years of missed British news.
Yeah.
Yes, who's Minister for What has changed several times, and yes, been some areas that have been harder hit than others and that kind of thing. And eventually you come up to a street in Mile End. These are, actually at this point, they're what's come to be regarded as a not very nice bit of Mile End, but at this point they're all right. It's rows of Victorian terraces, basically. They're not posh enough to have like the railings out the front in a basement or anything. They open directly onto the street. But it's relatively neat and well kept. However, there's a big sort of trellis board across the end of this road held up on two other bits. And there's an air raid warden in his sort of black with his helmet standing at the end of the road. And if you look further down, it doesn't look like this, it's not an absolute carnage sort of thing, but there is one there's one sort of hole in the street, if you like, and several other houses around it have either had sort of partial collapse, and there's still a lot of dust in the air, but probably some of it is smoke as well, but some of it's definitely dust. And the staff car lady will pull pretty much right up to the end of the road, and the warden will flag her down as she gets near, and she'll lean out to go and show him papers and stuff.
What was the name of the lad we're looking for?
Right, the name you've been given, he's Anthony Williams. Tony to pretty much everybody. His dad is named after his dad, who's also Anthony. His dad is his dad is in the army, has been since 39. Had one relatively minor injury to his leg, but other than that has been fine and been on active service for most of the war. He was last home about 2 months ago, because in the lead up to D-Day not anybody had gotten any leave really. He did go across with the forces into Normandy. He is, it's Tony, the lad, his mum, and he's got a little sister as well, who, by the date of birth on this, looks to be about 5 at this point. So she was probably born just before the war or around its beginning.
Do you have his mum's name?
Yes, his mum is Mary. And the family also had his gran, so her mum, staying with them as well, who is Lisa. And that's given as his household. He attends he's been attending the local school. Hermetics in sort of peacetime would have squirreled a lad like this off to one of their chantries, probably around sort of 10, 11-ish. It's probably just due to the war and the fact that they've not had time to keep on top of it.
Sorting hat age, isn't it?
Effectively, yeah. For Hermetics, there's sorting hats involved.
That's because they do have different houses.
But he's 12 at the moment, so at the moment he's still at the local sort of state school. But yes, the family have been aware that he is special and people are interested in him, and he will be going other places. But it's not happened yet. I say this area is pretty much a fairly neatly kept street by the looks of it, and you can see what are clearly residents of the street sort of milling around. Some of them seem to be trying to sort of comfort neighbours with worse damage to their place, and people are already, where the one house that's been taken out is in the collapse around it, people are already starting to pick over, mostly again sort of teenage lads and that kind of thing, some of them wearing the sort of warden's uniform, because some of the older lads would have been doing that, are starting to pick over and pull bits out, and everything bits of canned food, everything's being
So no looting going on?
No looting, no, It's all very orderly. So the local air raid warden seems about force. It's also, there's not really any other hits around here. You've not seen really
So this is
anything
kind
else.
of like an isolated event, sort of further away from most of the hits.
Yeah. I mean, it's not this is the only one in East
Sure.
London, but you've not seen anything for a couple of miles coming up.
Is that unusual for...
Again, the V1
In the
attacks
brief
are
bit.
really new. People are still not that certain how things are being done. It could, because, I mean, there are still air defences, so a lot of those sort of 70 to 100 that get as far as London, not all of them get to blow anything up. So it could be that there were 6 sent to this region, this is the only one that got through.
Sure.
You can't for definite say it's a targeted thing. The lady driver seems to have squared things with the warden. He's in the process of bringing this bit of wood out the way. And she says, I've got to go back to the ministry, but I've said that I'm all right to just drop you up where the family are. They've gone into one of the neighbours to be sort of given tea and patted, but one of the ladies of the street up there will meet you and tell you where you're going.
No.
Thank you very much.
And she
Thanks.
drops you, does a very neat 3-point turn, and as
I'm
neat
going
as she
to,
could in those old Fords, and makes her way down.
I'm going to offer everyone a cigarette and say, keeps the dust out of the lungs, so be careful. And I'll pass them around.
I will politely decline.
Very well, I'm
They're weird.
I'll take one, but...
I will
I always forget to...
I'll get out of the car, and as I saw you having trouble getting in, I will offer you a handout.
I'm fine, thank you. I'll do it myself.
Right, she drops you off and say the car does it sort of.
I'm okay.
The car does it sort of more like a 5-point turn, because say they're turning circles on those old Fords.
Oh my God,
crappy.
yeah.
And then starts back down the street again. And a sort of woman, probably in her sort of late 50s, quite tall and quite sort of solid looking, wearing a sort of the dresses that have become in style because they involve fairly minimal fabric, so they're quite straight. But she's also got one of those sort of crossover head aprons on. Will approach you. Again, looks pretty sort of confident in what she's doing. This is her street, you would have said. And comes up to approach you. You're the one visibly in uniform, even if it's a weird uniform. So she will probably walk towards you unless anyone else tries to sort of
I'm happy to
derail
sort of
her.
limp along behind the large Canadian.
Right. Good day.
Ah, hello, sir. Oh. She pauses briefly at your accent and then looks a bit askew. I've been told you're looking for the families. She points at the sort of hole.
That's right, we are.
Who is it you wanted to see?
Mrs. Williams, we were here to speak.
Oh, poor Mary. Have you heard anything about her? She looks around at you. You've not got bad news about the lad, have you? Or...
No, we're here to look
No
for him.
news.
Oh, all right, yeah. Mary said there might be people coming. Come on, she's in the kitchen. I'll show you.
I would like to have a look at the house.
Oh, that's fine. She yells at a couple of these teenage boys who've got these sort of warden's uniforms on and clearly think that they're doing their bits. And she's like, "Oi, Fred, get down off there. Come and help the nice gentleman." And he sort of slightly slithers down the bits of rubble and wood towards you and salutes smartly when he gets to the bottom. He's about 14.
I will return the salute to the courtesy.
What do you want to see, sir?
I'm looking for the boys' bedroom.
Okay, sure. Right, he leads you. Say there's a house that is basically not there. Some of the ground floor walls are there, but it's tricky to see. He leads you to the one just past it. Because these are terraces, they all share an internal wall because they're Victorians and won't bother building two walls if you don't really need to. So basically, the wall that was attached to the hole has gone. So the house has almost sort of got a sort of slightly,
Dollhouse.
terrible dollhouse feel. I was trying to search for a sort of suitably screwed up doll's house sort of adjective and I couldn't find one. Basically, this side wall is just gone. It's obviously taken chunks of the other walls and masonry and some of the beams of the roof with it. But the staircase looks intact and he looks like, for all the world, he's just going to pick his way across some rocky bits and go up the stairs. It's holding for now. You're quite a bit heavier than him, but it's holding for now.
I'll probably go with them.
I will follow, and my dog will follow me immediately.
Yeah, your dog will, if anything, slightly be testing the ground a bit because he's used to uneven trails and stuff, so he's pretty...
Yeah, well, I'm quite good on my feet and manoeuvring around awkward places.
Right, so that leaves us, Jeremy and Abe, with the nice lady going into her kitchen then.
Yep, sure.
Yes.
Someone should talk first.
I shall, my walking stick, tapping, head into the kitchen.
Right, so yes, she leads you in through a very smart front door and for a front room that looks like it's been in mothballs from before the war, probably, because the curtains are just closed and there's some seats in the chair, and back to the kitchen, which looks like where the family actually live. So like a lot of people, the front room's for posh and therefore it hasn't been used in an awful lot of years.
Yeah.
There's not been much posh around lately. The kitchen, you can hear sobbing before you even get there. There's a lady probably in her sort of mid-30s is sat on one of the low stools by the fire. She's got a cup of tea in her hands, but it looks like it's gone cold. And she's crying and crying and crying. There's an older lady sort of patting her and got her arms around her and trying to look after her. And there's a little girl, sort of someone's given her what looks like a bit of wallpaper and some chalk to do some drawing on the floor, but she doesn't look like she's done much of it. She just looks a bit confused.
Okay. Very sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Williams.
Oh, are you from the ministry? I thought someone might come.
That is correct. We have arrived. Some of our colleagues are currently looking at the house, just so you're aware. Sorry to disturb you at this time, but obviously time is of the essence. And in searching for young Tony, we need to ask you some questions.
That's understandable. Yeah. It's all right, Mum. It's all right, Mum. You take. She gestures at the little one, and the old lady says, "Take the little one." Actually, she sort of looks at the old one and says, "Can we use your front room?" And she says, "There's a great pulling of blankets off of the front room," and Mary goes through with you two towards the front room. Sit. Right. people trying to negotiate a slightly tumble-down Victorian house.
Half blown up Victorian house, yeah.
I think we should have some form. I say that it's not in danger of epic collapse. I'm not going to bury and kill people on the first session. But I think
Do it! TPK in the crappy old house.
But I think we should have some form of let's go with dexterity and athletics. All strength and athletics are allowed depending on how you're moving through it. Just to not fall on your ass and make a fool of yourself, basically. Difficulty 6. Has Roger not done well?
I fell on my ass. The one person that's used to climbing over rocky ground has failed.
How are you doing?
These are loose bricks, not rocks.
Have you failed or botched?
Failed.
Right, okay.
I would have had one dice.
Not so much. You haven't fallen on your ass, but you like
2.
this lad Fred and Rufus start trying to go up the stairs, and you sort of go, and then the tread goes, and you sort of go back down again. You've slightly broken the staircase, and you put your foot through the boards as well. So you're not looking the best. The dog sort of lolls its tongue at you a bit.
It's empathetic, remember?
It's empathetic. It feels bad for you.
Oh, right.
It's laughing at you.
It's a husky. They always look like they're laughing. It feels sympathetic, and it is concerned it's brought you to bad trails.
What's the safest way, boy? I will say to my dog, sorry to clarify.
Oh, right, yeah, no, wait. Right. The dog will go up a few steps.
What?
And then it'll reach one, and it's a long, you'd be skipping 2 or 3 steps, but you're a big, tall bloke, you can probably step. Basically, he finds, you have to miss a few of the weak ones, basically, but he will find you a little sort of way you can hop up behind these 2, sort of missing a few of the steps that are weak.
Alright, I will then go up that way.
Right.
He is handy.
Do I need to roll again?
No, it's fine. You're doing as the dog
Thanks,
says. It's fine. Right, so you get up there a bit first.
Okay.
The layout roughly looks like there is, as far as you can tell, this is a 2 up, 2 down. What it looks like you have is what presumably would be Mum and Dad's room if Dad was here, but it looks like Mum and the little girl are sleeping in here normally.
Right.
And there's a double bed in there. Then there's another room with just 2 single beds just on metal frames, which presumably would have been a boy and his sister in normaler times, but it looks like it's Tony and his gran at the moment as well. Because there's some distinctly old lady-looking face creams on one of the nightstands.
Okay. So, looking around for any signs of... Basically any signs of anything much happening to him. Also looking for something that maybe could be used with a combination correspondence life effect to try and find the kid.
I shall give you some rough ideas what might be in here, and then, yes, you can start making investigation and magic rolls, but rough description of things you can easily tell about Tony from his bedroom. He looks like a very neat and tidy child. There's a chest of drawers, all of his school shirts are neatly folded and placed in, even his socks are sort of in pairs and neatly put in. Everything looks very, very organised. He has a number of books. Most of them look like sort of pre-war kids, slightly adventure-y things. So things like the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, all that kind of stuff.
American literature.
Yes, well, American literature as well. But faintly, things like Moonfleet,
Biggles.
sort of, probably actually as well, Biggles, all that sort of thing. So particularly things that deal with adventure, and also outdoorsy stuff as well, which you will notice as well. There's lots of things like that as well knocking about. But there's also 3 or 4 books on birds, native British birds, and one that looks less well used about European birds. And the other thing you'll find out is it looks like it was a soapbox or something of his mum's, and there's very neat, carefully blown birds' eggs in it as well, of different types of birds, and they've all got a little pencil number written next to them.
Hey, does it look like the bed has been slept in?
It does, yeah.
I'm going to tell my dog to smell the bed to try and
Right,
get a
the
scent.
dog starts smelling. Right, so you two, we will have perception and investigation rolls, and we shall briefly switch back to the kitchen, if that is all right, for a moment, while you're really
Front room.
starting to look at things. Front room, good point, you've moved to the front room.
Move to the front room.
Right, the
There are
front room.
doilies everywhere.
The front room smells of mothballs.
I find that reassuring.
Yeah, because the other option would be moths. It smells of mothballs.
I just like stuffy.
Yeah, that's true. You probably do like stuffy sort of things.
Yeah.
It smells of mothballs. There is the frantic sounds from the kitchen that sound like somebody getting the best china out. Probably to offer you more tea. You guys are well caffeinated today.
Bring on the tea.
Right, and you sit down with Mary, and she is, she's holding what looks like a child's size, it's a school cap in her hands as well.
We brought tea, didn't we, to give to people? So I didn't.
No, I don't think.
Okay.
No, the people are getting you the best china out. It's very rude to.
I just thought, didn't someone say they could take this stuff out because they were badly provisioned in Mile End?
No, they told you to make sure you use the restrooms and everything before you went to Mile End.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, there is a great clattering from the kitchen. Right, she sits down and says, one of the wardens, there was a phone call this morning to a man at the ministry, and he said he'd send somebody down. They used to come and visit Tony every year before the war, but they've not been as frequent lately.
I've all been a bit tied up, and I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So we were hoping that you could possibly, and I know it's a difficult time for you currently, if you could take us through what's occurred, your point of view, and I'm going to do mind magic on her.
Okay, so she will explain. They went to sort of paraphrase.
You know, well, I just get this wand out and read from the script.
I'm going to do it without my stuff.
To paraphrase what she will explain is they all went to bed as normal last night. They they heard the sirens going off, and then about 3 minutes later the world exploded, so they didn't have time to get very far. She knows Tony got at least downstairs because he was carrying his sister at one point. When they got outside, people were trying to get in to help the neighbours whose house had actually been hit, including the lad Fred, who's taking you upstairs, who's one of Tony's friends. So she assumed Tony was helping them. It's only when the sun started to come up and people started to come back in, she realised he wasn't anywhere to be seen.
Right. If she tells us that,
Yep.
I'm probably more interested in reading the mind of the sister then, but I may probe her thoughts just to see if there's anything that was
Any details that
strange and she's assigning to a bomb went off.
Okay, yeah. You can attempt to read her sort of surface thoughts, if you like.
Yeah.
Okay, marvellous.
How do I do this?
So, right, we are going to do magic in this. So, what you have is all White Wolf magic difficulties are 3 plus the highest sphere used. As you are only trying to read her selfish thoughts, you will be using Mind 2.
Okay.
So the difficulty will be 5.
Okay.
Were you doing it with your stuff, you could reduce that difficulty, but you're trying to do it on the fly, so it's a bit harder.
Yeah.
So we will go for it like that if you want.
Okay, that's cool.
Right, marvellous.
How would like quintessency type stuff? Does my wonder?
Right. Quintessence will lower the difficulty.
Okay.
Which is always worth it. Willpower counts as an automatic success in this game, like all other White Wolf games. Yes.
So I roll my arete.
Well, almost.
That's right, isn't it?
Yes, you roll your arete, which is 3
and I need
dice.
5s.
And you need 5s.
Okay.
If you're used to things like Exalted or even Vampire, this can feel like the world's most ridiculously small
Exalted
dice
is like
pool.
half an hour. Let's wait half an hour while the dice stop rolling. It's like 30 dice for. Anyway.
Don't think so. I have 2 smaller hands for Exalted.
Get a bucket.
Do you? Yeah. It's like playing Warhammer.
And then we've all got to count them all up.
2.
2. Well, that is a good success on it. Right. It's very. Her recollection is clouded because she was afraid, which is perfectly normal. If a house next to you suddenly got a bomb in it, I think that's probably a normal response. The only thing she's noticed is she noticed that there was above the door frame to her house when the other house collapsed. She thought she saw a flash of like a gold-like metal in the brick, but that could be whatever the hermetic ward was going off. But that was definitely unusual.
Was it at the same time? So when the bomb...
It would have been literally as they were running down the stairs, so we'd be talking a minute or so after it hit.
So after the bomb went off, the ward...
Or at least she saw it being exposed.
Okay. Right.
You don't know if that was pinging. She can see Tony carrying his sister.
in that moment, they go down. He takes her down the stairs.
Yep.
The mother's upstairs, and he goes off into the street.
He goes into the street ahead of her and her mum because it
and
looks
then
like
she doesn't ever see Tony again.
no. That's what she recalled, but you can actually see what she saw.
Yep.
She and Granny get out into the street.
Yep.
She takes the little girl off of Tony.
Yep.
Other people are starting to come out of their houses. They all stand and look confused for a few minutes.
Okay.
They can't hear very much as well because she
Sure.
can't hear
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much because something's gone off. And she can hear other neighbours and things coming out. Then she sees some of the young lads, including Fred, the one you saw earlier, and Tony, starting to try and scrabble up the front of where the rubble is, as if they're trying to get at where their neighbours were. But after that, someone takes her somewhere and she doesn't. She loses track of him. So she last sees him somewhere around the rubble with Fred.
Okay.
Right. Adam, did you want to do anything while she's explaining this, or you?
Not while she's explaining it, no.
Okay.
But I'll probably get a few things out of the bag.
Okay, right. You start. The Etherite has bought machine. Right. You two, how are your investigation rolls? 2, how are your
What was the
investigation
difficulty?
rolls? Difficulty 6.
3.
3 success. Right,
Do
marvellous.
I get anything for the dog? Sniffing.
The dog, I will tell you what the dog has
Alright.
decided in a minute. So,
The dog has decided. I like that.
The child must die.
it's probably not decided that, it's a nice thing. Right.
He's a sweaty boy.
So, for the 2 you have found, is you have found, it does look like he's tried to squirrel a few things away. Right, the first one, they appear to be squirreled sort of down the side of his bed that's against the wall, basically. And what you have down here is a, it looks, it's basically, it's a pre-war comic, but it's perhaps a bit more violent one than his mum would be happy with him reading. There's lots of explosions and things, and it's about dare doing in the First World War, basically. And yeah, probably was intended for an adult audience, not for him. There's also lots of ladies being helped out of things as well, by the looks of it. And that's
Their
been
clothes.
Well, that's been squirreled down the side of the bed. There's also a notebook which not been so carefully hid, but it looks like it's got the correspondences to all of his birds' eggs in it. And there's also a little roughly drawn map of the area that tells you where he's been picking the eggs up. So at least you know some of the places he goes, which is probably helpful. A lot of them came from a nearby churchyard.
Okay.
Notebook, I think, would be
Yep.
a fairly good correspondence.
Yep,
link.
that's probably a good thing.
He's
Yeah.
really engaged with that.
And him and his eggs and things, he's really into all that sort of stuff, so they're probably a good link.
Maybe
For your stuff, you were
I was
after...
thinking the eggs when you described it.
Because he was after something for a correspondence effect. Are you after...
I'm
just-
generally investigating, looking for clues as to where he would have gone. Anything that would indicate that.
Like if he was in trouble, kind of.
You know, given that he's a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police,
Yeah,
he's doing
that's true.
the police search here. He's looking for clues.
Hoofprints.
Or signs the kid might have been preparing to
I'm
run
pretty
away.
confident there wasn't a horse.
Yeah.
Not
I found
necessarily
some wolf hair.
that. Maybe if there's any notes as to where he might go.
Well, the
You know,
notebook,
friends
as I said,
addresses.
that he's found looks quite a good thing, which seems to be his primarily bird watching type stuff. But that's probably a reasonably outdoorsy hobby for a boy, as far as you're concerned. So that sounds probably a good thing. There's also there is one odd thing you find as well, though, for your 3 successes, which is there is a novel, not a particular. Actually, you're Canadian, aren't you? There's a fairly classic French novel.
I can read French.
Yeah, it's Three Musketeers, for the sake of argument, in French. Kids in Marlin that go to state school are not taught to read French. Yeah, not taught to read French.
Okay,
That's in his sock drawer.
I'm gonna up and thumb through it. I want to see if he's made any notes or if there's anything perhaps inside.
Right.
That is a bit unusual.
It looks like it has been purloined from Middlesex Central Library at some point before the war, because that's what the stamp says. It is well overdue. About 7 years overdue. But also at 5 he would not have been allowed to check that book out, so it's probably not him that took it from the library. again, you don't even know where the Middlesex Central Library is. You're not even that certain where Middlesex is, to be perfectly honest, I don't think.
No idea.
No one is.
Again,
It doesn't exist anymore.
no one is.
Although some people still think it does.
Somewhere North London.
These people keep naming places and just like,
things.
yes.
They have different names for things that seem to be like a mile apart.
The
and there's just a lack of country in this place, as far as you can tell.
He's not even sure that's a area. It might just be a place.
It might be.
It could be a street for all he
Could be a
knows.
person. Yeah, no idea. But yes, it looks like it's been purloined from the Middlesex Central Library at some point before the war, so it probably wasn't him that checked it out. And it's got someone's written notes in pencil. It looks for all the world like someone's read through it and they're trying to find uses. It looks like someone trying to teach themselves a language from scratch, which is very difficult without context. He's gone back and he's referenced things, and he does it like a 12-year-old
He's a hermetic.
writing as well. And he's found other words, and then occasionally he's like really heavily underlined and scribbled funny little question marks, and then he was place names. Not every place name in the book, but particular ones, and that page often looks like it's been thumbed down as well, and he's put lots and lots of question marks around it. And like a lot of novels of that period, there's a little map so you can follow in the action where your characters are, and again he's drawn little things on the maps as well.
Okay.
And it's odd.
I'm going to take that for further investigation.
I wonder if you're assuming you're not going to go seeing, you're showing me that.
You'd probably just see me staring intently at a book.
Yeah, Fred will pull back to leave you some space because people make him nervous
Probably
sometimes.
have a look at the book you're staring at intently.
Can you read French?
Yes.
Oh,
At this point you
My
can.
character has quite a few.
Mais oui.
Lots of linguistics.
Yeah, you can all spell it. True as it is.
Awesome.
Looking at the place names and bits of the map he's looked at, is there any kind of correlation?
They're nearly all the area sort of directly south of Paris. In and around that area.
Okay.
Place names of other places come up, and even within Paris itself, they've not got any underlinings and they've not been put on the map.
Right. I will mumble to myself, he seems to have an interest in whatever that place is called.
Could be.
Perhaps.
Right, Colin, do you want to try some magic? And then I think Adam should have got his machines out to try some magic by then.
I think that I'm not going to try some magic with the kid here because
Probably
my
not.
magic
He will
for this is going to involve runes and blood. Probably.
Yeah, no, I said he'd.
He might come in handy.
I said he'd step back a bit, but you're going to notice that. Right, okay then.
Does the dog find it?
Are they runes written in blood?
Oh, quite
Dog-
possibly.
Yeah, cool.
The dog doesn't.
Hey kid, have you hydrated this one?
I need correspondence life magic. I'm trying to find
Oh,
dog-
absolutely.
The dog doesn't
learn from a
find anything unusual, but he's had a really good sniff around the bedclothes and everything, and he's got the look of a dog that's got the scent.
Excellent, so I'm pretty sure he's got the trail, perhaps.
Or at least he can have a very bloody good go at finding it.
I don't know how this works. Can I use light magic to kind of make this scent more vibrant? Or matter, or forces, or anything like that? I don't know how that works.
You could. Best bet probably in the first instance, because
Through
magic is sometimes the harder way of doing it, is see how far the dog gets and then use magic to,
Alright.
if he loses it.
You could possibly use life magic to make the dogs to enhance the dog's
To
senses.
smell, yeah. But at the moment he's got it, so
Alright, okay.
probably best to let
Yeah,
him
you
be
probably
able
use
to
matter 2 more to increase the amount of scent.
That's also what you could do. But never mind, we shall do that in a minute if you need to. But right minute, he's sat on the kid's bed. He's a happy dog at the minute. Right, you two in the front room. Adam, what is your character doing?
Where? It's been so long.
We just had a brief break.
What you doing?
Right. So I'm getting like an amphimeter and that kind of looking like thing.
Okay.
Out. So what I'll do with it is I'll say, right, do you mind if I want to check a few, sort of a resonance on you, if that's alright.
Yeah, alright, yeah.
See if there's anything unusual about this particular bomb. That's alright.
Okay, yeah.
So if I just attach this bit to here, to your finger to here, and this finger here, and then...
This is a fairly standard procedure, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, alright.
for us.
She's like,
The man who has no idea what's going on.
Exactly. Hey, but we're all a team. So.
Yes. Ministry guys were strange when they first turned up as well.
Yeah, it does seem a bit unusual, but no, don't worry. It's just a few readings. By this, I could tell what kind of the energy across you is, and it would have been slightly destabilised. It wouldn't do any harm, I think, but we could tell what kind of bomb it was by it. If it was unusual.
Right, what are you
This
doing?
is when I should do the mind reading.
I would just want to see if there's any prime type stuff to read off of them, if there's any been weird magical
Okay,
things
great,
happening
yeah.
around them, any effects other than hopefully not a ward.
Okay,
Just
well,
if there's any
this
resonance or
is
anything hanging on them.
sensory magic, so it's difficulty 4.
Indeed. 1.
1. Well, as I say, again with Arate, a success is a success because you're rolling so few dice that anything is good.
I got 89.
To be honest, a
Those
fail
ones.
is not the worst scenario ever either.
Yeah.
Those ones.
Yes, one of the few games where you're like, woo, fail. Because could have been so much worse. It can.
I've made a sign for Adam across the table. You science, I'll mind magic.
Marvellous. So, yes, excellent. So, okay, she's had a mild effect break near her nearby.
Yeah, so we're taking some readings and writing some stuff down, and then
she's had a mild effect break near her nearby,
mm-hmm.
which feels like a correspondence effect. So that's probably a ward going down, but that sounds reasonable. There is something else on her as well. Something else slightly dramatic has happened around her, magically speaking, tonight.
It's not a current effect, but it's probably a big enough effect that's left
Something happened.
impacts on a pattern.
Yes.
Can you tell me about it?
It was mostly prime based, and its intention was not to do her any harm at all.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, the opposite. But it's a funny resonance. Very, very, very strong. Almost. And actually, considering you're in a fairly used front parlour in a rundown bit of Mile End where no one slept properly for days, it's almost happy. It's kind of sunshiny. You can almost, one of those you can almost taste to some extent. It's sunshiny and glowy and warm.
That's unusual.
Are you saying that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, are you doing anything while he's doing that?
I'm watching him.
Right, you watch
Because
him.
I'm very curious about this chap.
He appears
He's got
to be
all his
sciencing.
gadgets and gizmos.
He is sciencing.
It seems a bit, unreliable to me. But
But then
it's not there's no sort of standard.
we've got some unusual reading today. It suggests it's a particular different explosive. Like I say, you're fine. It's just interesting
Okay.
for a more long-term thing.
Could it have hurt Tony?
No, quite the opposite, actually. I think. Well, this is one of the least damaging kind of
Oh,
things.
right,
So
okay.
these seem to be one of the more cleaner propellants, so it's less likely to do any collateral damage on people.
I
think.
wish I know where he'd gone.
Was it very bright? Do you know? I guess you wouldn't know. I need to compare it with. But from
The
what we
bomb wasn't, no. It was just, I think the wall was still intact when it went.
right.
But when we got in the street, I thought I saw a bit of a flash of something, but it was probably just someone lighting up a torch when you've been in the dark for hours, haven't
Yeah,
Bit-
could have been.
you? You feel it glow, don't you?
Or an after image after whatever you did see.
Yeah, possibly.
Or it could have been a bit of fuel or propellant or some sort of flickering.
Something catching, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While she says that, can I...
Yeah, I'll just, I think I'll allow previous effect to
Sure.
sort of be running. When she was worried about the little girl because she was crying a lot and she was trying to check her and see she wasn't hurt.
Mhm.
And over where the building was, she did see a brief, very, very
Where the
gold
boys were...
glow, where the boys were trying to help out. There was
Okay.
this brief golden glow.
I think I need to have a chat with Fred.
But your energy seemed to be
Yeah.
all right. Do you mind if I check your daughter as well?
No, because she sit on my
Was she
lap.
mine?
She's
Yeah.
a bit frightened.
Yeah.
Right, she steps in the back,
No, don't worry, it
picks,
doesn't
up the,
hurt.
picks up the little one.
Your mum was fine with it, wasn't it?
She's not crying.
It doesn't even tingle, does
She
it?
just looks confused. She's
Yeah.
like, no, sweetheart, it's fine. She just looks confused.
Such a great bedside manner. If you'll excuse me, and I'm gonna leave the room and go outside.
You two up outside have been looking at things, and Fred sort of he's been pacing in what's left of the landing, and he sort of puts his head in. Is there anything? Do you know where Tony is? I'm worried.
That's what we're looking into. Where did you last see him?
Well, we were trying to get to Mrs. Evans. He points at the bomb house. And me and one of the other lads, Roger and Tony, we were trying to get to her. And then I think he must have knocked a candle or something, because there was like an oil lamp, there was a fizzed sort of light. And I turned around and looked, and he was still helping us, but he looked a bit funny. And then we were pulling her out, and and we got her out to the street, and I went to turn around and talk to him, and he was gone.
When you say he looked a bit funny?
Yeah, like he surprised, I thought maybe giving himself a shock or something, or,
Perhaps there would have been loose electrics out.
Not much electrics, I don't think, in Mrs. Evans' place, but possible. But I think he knocked a candle or an oil lamp or something, so it was this sort of, like a candle, as it flares and then it stops. It was like a flare stop thing. And then he looked a bit confused, and then I went, and he definitely helped to get to the pavement, I know that. And then I looked around, he's gone, he's a bit of I like Tony, he's a bit of a funny lad, but...
Can you show me the last place you saw him?
Yeah, sure, down in the street. Are you going to go back with him and Fred?
Yeah.
And Dog?
And I'll be outside. I'll be outside having a cigarette at that point. I'm trying to find Fred.
I'm just going to look at the dog and say, keep your nose on that scent.
Right, it senses affirmatively at you. It shall do that. Right, you are still in the front parlour. Are you going to run the same effect?
Yeah.
Run the same effect on the daughter, then.
2.
Again, very similar thing. There was some sort of prime-related effect went off near her. It's definitely prime. If anything, it feels like almost someone unpracticed trying to put a counter-magic-y type ward thing up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But again, that very strong resonance. It's almost honey-y. Now you can actually really get it. It's sunshine and honey, and it's kind of straight. Maybe even a sort of slightly, but it's a really strong resonance, really, because you've got more successes. Or a really established effect or something like that.
But it seems to be some sort of counter to.
That's what it feels like. It feels like a protective magic or a counter charm or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean, to be fair, it could have been this hermetic ward. You don't know the full details of that.
Mm-hmm.
But you doubt there'd be anything that strong randomly sitting in the East End. That seems a bit odd. Yep. Right. You guys outside. These guys come down from the house with the dog and Fred, who's wearing the sort of, junior air raid warden.
I'll offer just the young chap I've been looking for. I understand you've been helping out my colleagues. I just wanted to talk to you briefly, although it seems like you're in the middle of something.
Well, no, we've been showing him Tony. I've been showing him Tony's room, haven't I, gents?
His mother indicated to us that you and he came back to try and help with the neighbour.
we were pulling Mrs. Evans out.
Mind magic.
Okay, right. This poor lad. Right, mind magic the poor lad as well. At least you can do the blood around him.
I want to talk to him about the experience, and then as he's thinking of it, I'm reading it to see it. So it's not I'm not creating and raising different thoughts in his mind that would cause him to be suspicious. I want him to just explore it, and I'll sense it. 2.
2. Right. Okay. What he saw roughly was when they come down, Mrs. Evans, who is presumably the lady next door, looks like an older lady. Looks like she was in her kitchen, and the bomb hasn't hit that bit of the house, but the floor has gone. She's kind of fallen down. Her leg is at a very funny angle. She looks like she's breathing, but she doesn't look very conscious at all. Him and another lad that isn't Tony, and you get to see Tony as well for the sort of first clear thing.
Okay.
He's a young-looking 12-year-old, definitely.
Okay.
You can see why Fred keeps saying poor kid, even though it's probably only 18 months in it.
Mm-hmm.
He looks younger than the other 2 lads. They're trying to pull her up out because she's sort of half slipped where the floor has slipped.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of wakes up and starts yelling because obviously the leg is broken by the sounds of it and it's really hurting her. he turns around to Tony to try and get him to sort of lift up the leg.
Yeah.
And Tony's looking down at her, and there is a light emanating from Tony. It's a sort of golden glow.
Ah.
And then he sort of almost... Tony almost goes like that, and it goes out. And then you see him trying to help hold her legs.
Yeah.
And they drag him out, and then he's sort of setting her, and there's other people running in, and the big woman that let you in, Maeve, is coming over, and he turns around to Tony, he's not there. But literally, he only let him out of his sight for 5, maybe 10 seconds.
Okay. So he awakened.
Yeah, that would be my guess from what we've seen so far.
Yep. Okay, cool. Okay, well, I'll let him tell the story, and I'll say, well, young man, you've been very useful to...
I can try and find George, he's the other lad.
Certainly.
With us, but Tony, where would Tony go? I'm going
to give him a sixpence.
Oh.
Just to thank him for his help.
Sir.
Because he's, it's difficult times.
But yeah, he's a good lad. He's so into his birds, though. But if because
ornithology.
My old man, after the First World War, he was in the war, and Great War, and he used to get a bit iffy when things exploded and stuff. Maybe Tony went like that. I can show you where he goes and does all his bird watching and stuff. Maybe he runs somewhere safe.
I will look at the people who've just been spending time in his room. Does that seem
From
like
what you've been given, if the churchyard, however, would be in the bounds of the effect, though, so he's probably still not there now, but it couldn't hurt. Right, Adam, you are finishing up inside, probably, by now, I'd have thought. Are you coming out, or are you...
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, I don't think there's anything else for me to ask you, but
right.
And I was doing it, like, when I was sort of attaching things to, a couple of things to the kid and that kind of stuff, I was sort of saying what I was doing and what it meant, and using sciencey
words.
Yes.
The mum, I say, looks like she's glazed over. The little girl thinks it's quite fun with all the little things that go up and down.
The wavy little
the little one thinks it's quite good fun. Yeah. But you can't. You pack your kit up and you come outside, and these guys are outside with Fred.
Okay. I'm going to ask my dog to show me where the scent goes.
Right. The husky starts purposefully moving down the road.
I'm following it.
The Mountie and the husky begin purposefully moving down the road.
Fred seems like
the dog got a scent off the bed. I'm following the dog.
This seems like a perfectly good lead.
Is one of the wardens around, or the kid, or
Fred is around.
If you could gather any shrapnel you found from the actual thing, we'll be back at some point.
Am I supposed to be coming with you, or?
I think we're heading
I was going to show him where Tony goes to his bird.
Is the church that way?
Well, you can get to it, but yeah.
Why don't you come with us and send George?
I'll go George to get the shrapnel. George, yeah.
I don't need to run it. I want to look at it before we leave.
Yeah. He yells for
to be careful with such things.
Yeah, lad that looks a little bit older.
Obviously, yeah. I think it should have entirely gone.
Have some gloves. I'll say as I start walking down the street.
Yeah. Right, Fred comes and trots along with you three, and you're sort of striding ahead with the dog, I'm assuming, because you've got quite long stride lengths and he's a husky. I'm assuming you're making better pace, probably.
I'm way behind.
If I notice that other people are lagging, I will tell the dog to slow up.
All right, he will slow up a bit. Let you catch
I'll
up.
keep up, don't worry.
Fred is walking with you guys.
You wouldn't have heard that. I would have said that.
No, but if you start slowing down, I will say, I will keep up, don't worry. I'm used to people slowing down for me. It really annoys me.
No.
Yes, so be careful.
No, it looks more like a husky breed. It's supposed to be there's a theory that there's more closely related to wolves than other species.
Like Eskimos and stuff.
They're not related to Eskimos, no.
I didn't think. But he's not an Eskimo. They don't look like that.
I don't think so.
He's Canadian.
Oh, all right, yeah.
He's a good chap.
Yeah, no.
Yes. Hence
One of my sisters, her young man's Canadian. It's over here.
Oh, excellent. I'm slightly confused why we're talking about relationships.
This is the only Canadian he knows.
Jeremy Cranthorne does not discuss such things.
This is the only Canadian this lad has ever met. You want to have a second?
That's
Canadian
not in the Financial Times.
It's not. No, he's yet. My sister's young man's a Canadian.
Alright. What is he? Is he pilot? Is he
Volunteer pilot, yeah. Been here for a few years.
Nice. So, for a while then?
Yeah.
So you got to fly himself, or is he a...
No, he flies, yeah. Oh, at least he says he does. I don't know. It's not really my business.
No.
Right, you sort of trot along, and he tells you that Tony is obsessed with bird watching and bird eggs, which the two of you that have in his room know.
Yep.
And the churchyard, he knows where all of the nests are, and he's even, he can he knows different pairs of birds. He can pick out individual ones that nest together and stuff. And yeah, he seems to know all sorts about it. And
the dog's taking us there?
the dog is going in that general direction, yes. He says that a lot of the lads, things like collecting the eggs and then emptying them out is not that uncommon a thing, at least with the littler lads. But Tony gets angry if anyone takes too many from any one nest and all this sort of thing, and says they won't come back. And, yeah, he sort of pleases them a little bit as well. Right, and when you...
My kind of guy.
Right, and you get round the corner, and this is it's a parish church. It's by London standards, a relatively modern one, so it's probably late Victorian. It's been put up in sort of stone block work rather than like stone or like flint and stuff like the older stuff would have been if you went towards Whitechapel or whatever. This is a Victorian chapel, probably. It's Church of England, as far as you can tell from what it says on the board out front. It's got quite a decent churchyard around it for a modern church. By the Victorian period, people were getting a bit iffy about graveyards and wanted stuff happening out in the city. But I guess out here you were far enough out, it was okay to have a churchyard. And again, at this point, all relatively modern. There's not really anything here older than about 1890. So the stone's all looking pretty good nick as well. But there is several big trees, there's lots of greenery, there's lots of hawthorn bushes and all this sort of stuff. And because there's a war on it, the churchyard is not as well maintained as it could be.
No recent coppicing.
Yeah, no one's tidied this up at any point soon, so it's a little bit overgrown, so it's probably why there's quite so many birds and whatnot here. Then he says, well, this is where he hangs out, but I can't see him. The dog has stopped. You can tell he's not lost it, he's trying to triangulate because there's a lot of new smells as well now he's here. Everyone looks at the husky. The husky continues to smell the floor. And then he starts to cautiously walk into the churchyard.
Can I reach out with mind and correspondence to see if there are any intelligent...
Any humans.
Can I have a mind sense?
Yeah, if people wish to have a sensory, magic-y type roll, they can.
Does it look like he's struggling with the scent?
He doesn't like it's less easy.
That's level 1, isn't it?
So it's
Yeah,
4.
Yeah.
It's
1.
Can I do something to try and help him? Bolster the scent or his sense of smell?
Yeah, you could. That would probably be life 2, because you're sort of slightly altering a simple creature. Do you do life 2? Do you do matter 2?
It's got life and matter.
But only 1.
But what you could possibly do, given you and the dog do have a sort of empathic link, you could kind of sense life yourself and try and sort of feed in that information, if that makes sense. If nothing else, it might help.
Can I do it through the dog?
Yeah, or both. Yeah, one or the other. So roll your life senses.
Something about it counting as you.
Yeah, it counts as you. So roll your life So you roll your arete, and again, you get difficulty 4. Unfortunately, 10s don't explode on the aretes, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the... I should have mentioned that, it's my fault. It's one of the rare expectations. So there's still 2 10s.
Well, I thought it was mostly only on specialities that was the 10 explodey thing.
I will double check it before we get that far.
It's not... Yeah. 2 successes on that is fine, isn't it?
2 is more than fine on the thing. So we've got 2, 1, 1, and you're watching people. Right, okay, so the dog has stopped just because there's quite so much other life in here. There's so many other things around and smelling. What time are we at, by the way? Right, it's 2 minutes to 10. So, the dog sort of continues on confidently once you've sort of helped him sort of negate the noise. You're seeing if there's any mines here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there are any people.
I'm basically doing the same
similar thing. There are no people in this churchyard other than you lot. The dog is probably...
I'm going to read your mind.
The dog is probably... Both of you pick up the dog is somewhat bright. You get more of a mind ping off the dog than you get a normal dog.
Okay, cool. Okay. So...
The dog is brighter than your average dog.
Okay.
And particularly with hermetics, you'd have probably come across familiars.
Yeah, lots of...
Yeah, lots of Hermetics have familiars. It's very traditional thing.
Owls and stuff.
Right. So yeah, there's no mines currently in the churchyard. The dog leads you relatively confidently, and then just stops short, which he normally does when the trail has stopped. And if you go up, there's quite a dense sort of probably it's privet. But as privet tends to as he gets older, the underneath's kind of hollow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like a little den, but it looks like somewhere you might sit
bivouac
where you're
area,
bird
isn't it?
watching.
Yeah.
And the dog stops dead there, but there's no sign of anyone.
Okay, I'm going to tell the dog to move around and try and see if their scent goes anywhere else.
Right, he'll try.
And I'm going to investigate the den.
I'm going to pull my stopwatch out of my pocket and check the time. And I'm constantly trying to figure out what this thing does. So I'm just curious.
To see what it's
To
doing.
see-
Okay.
You activate your wand look.
No, I don't. Well, no, I don't know. I don't know what it does, and I don't know if it's relevant. So I'm just looking at it.
Just looking at, but I'm no expert at, investigating random the bushes and whatnot. But I will
Well, I
regret
am
if there's
actually an
anything
investigation expert, so I will
Right.
do that as well.
I think as it is 10 o'clock, we may call it there.
Sure.
And then we shall have some perception and investigation-y, tracking-y type rolls. You're
So,
not there
I'm not
next
there
week.
next week. So
I will think of something.
That's
I will
fine.
also sort out a few minor rules queries for next week as well. So I need to get my head around some
Next
bits,
time.
but we're good. Next time.
We had a question, didn't we?
We did have a question. So, we think the difference between how the manifest avatar works and the slight difference people had as to what that was is the difference between second and third ed mage, having looked at it.
Okay.
In third ed mage, a manifest avatar, the default
It's like
assumption is it's
a ghost
invisible.
standing next. Oh no, it's invisible.
Yeah, the one we're
It's
using in
invisible
revised, it's
unless-
invisible unless
I buy things.
unless you buy things to
give
make it
a
so.
manifest.
Whereas
Okay.
second ed, it was visible. I personally think
to
it
others.
being
It's always visible.
yes,
to
it's
them.
always visible to you. I personally think it being invisible makes the mage look like more of a crazy person and therefore is more fun to use anyway. So I'm all for that anyway.
That's, yeah.
So
whatever's
yes,
more
we
fun
we
is-
are going with the third ed ruling on it, and revised third ed technically. But even if it wasn't, I think that makes it more entertaining.
So not mage 20.
Not mage 20 because that
I
was
don't
a
even know what that
confused
means.
mess.
So
It's a confused mess.
There'll be a 5th edition at some point as well.
Oh joy, that will make life so much
It
easier.
means that 20 counters as an edition. As
Really?
advised.
what?
I
They're
believe
mixing
they're
things.
calling them 5th edition, the next set. And
Okay. Yeah.
I have no idea. We will worry about that when it comes out and probably look at it and go back to using this one anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Masters and Monsters.
Yep.
First session down.
Yep.
Cool
We're
to
not
get all the
dead.
characters. We're not
We're
dead.
not dead.
Yeah. You
No
might be
one-
next week.
No one
Yeah.
has botched any magic rolls yet. No one has accumulated any paradox yet.
I will wander off following the voice in my head. Whether it's the good voice or the bad voice, we'll find
We'll have
out.
to find out, won't we? Yes.
Cool. Okay. So check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're going to be doing a Twitter poll for our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay show to see who gets a free fortune point. I'm going to have a chat with Sam about how we can do a Twitter poll for this show as well and what we can do there.
What to do with Colin next?
Free points. Yeah.
It's a poll of what happens to my character.
Oh, yeah. That's brilliant. Maybe
Great
we'll
for
do
good or
that.
bad voice.
I'll come
good or-
I'll come up with some options.
Spot on. Good or bad voice. Maybe. We'll
Was it
see.
my avatar or the,
We'll see.
or the ghost?
If you do get on Twitter, check out the Dwarf Run GIF. It's awesome.
No, you don't.
Yes, do. We'll be back with Masters and Monsters in 2 weeks. Check out our Patreon, link below. Please consider supporting the channel. Help us make it awesome for you guys. We want to turn it into podcast as well. And we need help with the ongoing costs, etc. of all those things. Anyway, check all that stuff out. We'll see you in 2 weeks for more Mage. But until then,
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yep.
thanks, Roger. Cool. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.